Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us and participate in this very important meeting tonight. It's always a pleasure to meet with another commission so we can share some ideas and get to know each other. So this is, really, really good. So we'll open the meeting by, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda for tonight. You have it. So anyone who's not familiar with the agenda. So I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda.
So moved.
A second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second that we accept tonight's agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the agenda is adopted for tonight. We have just 4 items or 3 items on the agenda for tonight. And first, we'll look at public comment. Have we received any public comments in writing by email for this meeting?
Chair Brown, we have not received any public comment.
Okay.
We have not received any public comments either.
Correction, we have received one public comment. It's so the Parks Board, I believe you've received the public comment, and we'll make sure the commission gets the public comment as well.
Okay. Do we have anyone on by Zoom that would like to provide a public comment?
Currently, we do not, and we did not have any additional come in after the first one we sent out last week.
Okay, and we have no one on the phone.
No.
Okay, well, great. Then we'll move to the main item for tonight's meeting, and that is sponsorship policy discussion, part 2. So who would like to open up that discussion?
I will go ahead and do that. And just real quickly, I thought we could do quick introductions before I start in. If you guys want to introduce the 2 boards, and then we'll do staff introductions real quick.
Okay, so we'll start with Commission on Equity. I'm Cliff Brown. I am the newly elected chair of the commission. And we have 3 other members here. Annie?
I'm Annie Clay. I'm the vice chair. Elma Jackson, past chair.
And Alanis Blackburn, youth representative.
Gary Larson,
Commissioner Goodwin, Lacey, Parks, Culture and Recreation.
And Commissioner Goodwin is our new chair, I'll add.
Oh, yeah. There's so many titles now.
I know.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm Camber Good, current co-chair and commissioner.
I'm Aaron Wheeler, Park Commissioner.
Thank you, commissioners. I'm Jen Burbage, Director of Parks, Culture and Recreation. And let's do the folks on the screen first.
I'm Sue Faylash, Recreation Manager for the Parks, Culture and Recreation.
Sarah Smith, I'm Executive Assistant for Parks, Culture and Recreation.
And we have 1 staff in the room there.
Jeanette Sealer, Recreation Supervisor, handling special events.
I'm Shannon Kelly Fong. I'm the Assistant City Manager, and I just want to make a note that we are also joined by Commissioner Kim Sauer.
There she is.
Hello, everybody. Sorry. Sorry for a few minutes late. Nice to see you all. Kim Sauer, Equity Commissioner.
Thank you. All right. So before you tonight, there is an updated Parks, Culture and Recreation corporate sponsorship and naming rights policy. We've got a lot of recommendations, and it is a big packet, but don't worry, we will walk through it. But before we get started, I just really want to sincerely thank all the commissioners for your insights that you shared at the last meeting, and also just taking this extra time tonight. I know one of the commissioners was mentioning that they already had a meeting this week on Monday. So this is a super important policy, and we just really appreciate your thorough review of this. So thanks again for that. Since we last met, city staff have spent a considerable amount of time doing research and making edits. We also met with our city attorney to review the policy and the recommendations. And so, like I said, we do have some recommendations here tonight. I I'm gonna go through kind of an intro and then we'll pause for a couple questions and then I'll go through each attachment and I'll pause at the end of each attachment. If you do have a burning question, please interrupt me, but it would be nice to be able to chunk it out just in the interest of time. So I appreciate that. A little bit of background. So as you all know, but for the benefit of anybody who might be watching, the Lacey Parks Culture and Recreation Department relies on partnerships, grants, donations, and also sponsorships, which is what we're here tonight to talk about, in order to offset the cost of providing enjoyable and important services, such as our programs, events, and our facilities to the community. We are uniquely positioned to partner with individuals, corporations, limited liability companies, and any other legal or commercial entity really that provides money, goods, or services to help bring these programs to Lacey and the community. And that's why we have a sponsorship program and the policy. So we'd like to propose tonight that the corporate sponsorship policy be changed to just sponsorship policy. And that policy provides guidance for entering into the sponsorships and naming right agreements in exchange for financial or material in-kind support. The program supports Lacey Parks in our efforts to develop, maintain, improve, support, market, and sustain our park assets and programs, which in turn benefit the customer and the community. And these types of partnerships obviously generate revenue. They reduce our expenses because some of our sponsorships are the in-kind budget cost saving type. And they also help increase the awareness of parks, culture, and recreation in programs because the sponsors are helping to get that information out to the community as well. And then they can also complement the visitor experience. Importantly, sponsors don't have decision-making influence over the programs or the events or the facilities that they're sponsoring. And I wanted to note too that in 2022, the sponsorship program secured just under $69,000. And since Jeanette is here, well, even if she wasn't here, we would still give her kudos. She really takes the lead on this program and works closely with the sponsors to make sure that we are following through with what we've promised to the sponsors. And so thank you, Jeanette, for all of your work and for that's a very large amount that helps our department. So great job on that. So as you know, we met November 14th to discuss some updates that might be needed based on some feedback that we received. And so in brief, the advisory bodies yourselves discussed creating a more comprehensive and standardized evaluation process for the city to use when reviewing potential sponsors, and then adding language to the policy and other sponsorship related materials, for example, the agreements that are in alignment with the city's draft equity goals and commitment to equity. And then the other idea that was discussed was separating environmental stewardship and equity criteria. So a lot was discussed, but just to put it in a nutshell, summarize the main feedback that we received. So we did draft updates, like I said, which speak to those three things that I just mentioned. And so I'm going to share my screen with the policy. And can you all see this?
Jen, we can all see it, and I know you're probably gonna, like you mentioned, go through everything that is an attachment, but can you just explain the difference between attachment 1 and attachment 2 for everybody?
Yes. Absolutely, thank you. Yes, attachment 1. I'm just going to put the packet up real quick. So the first attachment has, I'm just trying to recall which one was which in the packet. The clean copy was the first one, right? So we'll start, I'll flash the second one up really quick just to just to show the difference. This one is pretty marked up. These are the draft changes. This is attachment 2. And so we wanted to make sure that you could see everything that we did for the suggested changes. However, the first attachment, we have accepted all of those changes and just provided a clean copy. It's just much easier to read. And so I was hoping to go through this one and highlight some of the changes, but I'm happy to flip over to the other one if you want to see how it read in the policy as it stood before the changes were made. Does that work for the boards? Okay, and is this big enough for you to see?
If you can make it just a little bigger.
Yes.
Thank you, Jen.
Yeah. All right, so, and I do want to say too, that there are a few minor edits that we need to make. We noticed some words weren't capitalized that needed to be, and also we felt it was important to number all the items, number and letter them, so that in the future when we're referring to sections, we can say 2A. But the format came through a little wonky on some of the pieces, so we will clean that up. We're really going for content tonight, so thank you for your patience with that. And so really, there wasn't a lot of changes on the first page besides the, removing corporate off of the front of the policy. So what I'm going to do is highlight the major changes since you've all read it multiple times. Again, not a lot of change on the purpose and the policy statement. Under definitions, we did put them in alphabetical order. I wanted to highlight that the Parks, Culture, and Recreation Board name change is official. That went through council this past Thursday evening. So the board will be known as that. And for short, the Parks Board, which is what everybody calls you already. There is a change under the definition of a sponsorship. And so it is a relationship with a person. And in meeting with our city attorney, he explained that a person refers to an individual, corporation, limited liability company, or any other legal or commercial entity. So we will use the person or persons throughout this policy. Just know that it could refer to any of these things. And Shannon, of course, do stop me if there's something you think that needs to be highlighted. In the example types of sponsorships, we did put those in alphabetical order, and we gave a little more specific information about each one. Even though we're not limited to these exact types of sponsorships, these are the main ones that we do use. And so, for example, a presenting sponsor, we called out here that the presenting sponsor is positioned after the event name, for example, Spring Fling presented by company name. So there's just a little more information in this section for you. We didn't have much to change for the non-public forum status. The next edit we made was adding this first sentence under the disclaimer of endorsement, that the city does not endorse the products, services, or ideas of any sponsor. And this is really the section that we made significant changes to, the eligibility criteria. And as you know, we discussed this in a lot of detail at the last meeting. So what we did here is, first of all, you'll see it's just a little cleaner to read. We separated the paragraph out, so it's easier to look at the different subsections here. And you'll see that we have, and I'll just quickly go through these. So the naming rights or sponsorship benefits are limited to the promotion or recognition of enterprise and or activities that do not compete, impair, or conflict with the mission, policies, goals, or operations of the city and Lacey Parks or designated assets or programs. Sponsors must support the mission and policies for the city of Lacey and Lacey Parks. And the director or designee may use, but is not limited to, the following criteria when evaluating sponsorship proposal. And the director or designee will have the prerogative to accept or reject the proposal. And so these following criteria, we really added quite a bit here in outlining that the compatibility of the person's background, products, customers, and promotional goals need to be aligned with the City of Lacey's mission, Lacey Parks mission, the City of Lacey's equity values and mission, and environmental stewardship. And then the person's past record of involvement with the city, community support for or opposition to this proposal or previous agreements, the impact on the community, where the sponsorship is implemented, the timeliness or readiness, the actual value, the operating and maintenance costs associated with the proposal. And at its discretion, Lacey Parks may reject an offer, and circumstances under which this may occur include, but are not limited to, the potential sponsor seeks to secure a contract permit. So if they're in the works of trying to do that, it could be a conflict of interest. Also, the potential sponsor seeks to impose conditions that are inconsistent with the city's mission, values, policies, or planning documents. They seek to impose conditions that are inconsistent with the city's equity values and mission, or the city's environmental stewardship values. If it could create a conflict of interest, or if the potential sponsor is in litigation with the City of Lacey. So we did add quite a bit of wording. Let's look at the edits on this section just because they were so significant. So you can see where we've listed the compatibility items here. And I think I hit all the points there. Okay. My apologies if I make you a little bit dizzy here. Okay, and then moving on to page 5. We really, so we list the types of advertising that are allowed in section 8. And I will point out that we did make some changes to the language under number 5, provision of services and programs that provide support to low income community members, older adults, or people of all abilities. So we just used, I feel, a little bit better language in that one. And then in the advertising not allowed, we did make significant changes towards the end. The first one, though, we did add vaping products, vaping devices as being not allowed. And then towards the end, like I said, these ones are all the same, but we did letter them. The significant changes are the addition of R, S, T, and U, which are, it's not allowed if it's adverse to the city's mission and values, promoting or engaging in activities that is in conflict with the city's mission and values as adopted or hereinafter amended. We did add this one if it's adverse to the city's equity values, promoting or engaging in activities that is in conflict with the city's draft equity values. And then there is a section of the draft, which has been added in here. And I believe that the Commission on Equity has been working on this, so you're probably pretty familiar with the wording. If it's adverse to parks, culture, and recreation. And then this one we added too, discrimination. Entities that promote discrimination or have a record of discrimination on the basis of race, creed, color, national origin, age, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, veteran status, marital status, genetic information, or the presence of any sensory, mental, or physical disability, or are unable to accept the city's anti-discrimination language. And then under procedures, persons proposing to be considered shall submit a sponsorship questionnaire And so this is an attachment 1 to the actual policy. And this is something that we would require. And so our staff would send that out prior to consideration of a sponsorship. And we'll take a look at that. And then this one here, attachment 2, this is an optional thing, but the director or designee may use the matrix to help review potential sponsorships. And we'll show you that. You've probably taken a look at it. And then this is basically, this statement here is basically the same. If the director approves the proposal in principle, staff will draft the sponsorship agreement for signature, which will outline the terms. And then and so those are approved by the director, but if it is a full park or full facility naming right opportunity, that will be submitted to the Parks Board for approval to seek a naming right sponsor. And we did add in, once approved by the Parks Board, it would then need to be approved by City Council. So that's always been the case, but it was only in the council policy manual and not in this policy. So we wanted to shore those two things up. And I have to apologize to you. This should say City Council Policy Manual section 5.13. So I apologize for that. We did renumber the city policies at one point last year. And so we had inadvertently grabbed the old numbering system, but it's the same policy. So I will show you next the attachment 1 to the policy, which is making you dizzy, the sponsorship questionnaire. So this is the one that staff would be required to send out. So to be considered for a Lacey Parks Culture and Recreation sponsorship, please answer the following questions. The director or designee will use this information when evaluating a sponsorship proposal. In all cases, the director or designee will have the prerogative to accept or reject the proposal. So the first question is the City of Lacey mission. Our mission is to enrich the quality of life in Lacey for all its citizens and to build an attractive, inviting, and secure community. Council works in partnership with residents to foster community pride, develop the economy, plan for the future, and the preservation and enhancement of our environment. So number 1, do your values align with the City of Lacey mission? Yes or no? If no, describe how or why. Then we have Lacey Parks Culture and Recreation vision. We create exceptional events, experiences, and environments that delight, educate, and inspire the human spirit, connecting people to each other and to the past and building a strong, healthy community. Do your values align with the Lacey Parks vision? Yes or no? If no, describe why or how. City of Lacey equity values. And so this is the abbreviated draft as well. The City of Lacey champions change that leads to a more equitable society for all community members, regardless of race, gender, income, age, sexual orientation, disability, nationality, religion, gender expression, English proficiency, and educational attainment, among other identities, many of which can intersect to create compounding marginalization or privilege. Do you support all aspects of these values and this statement? Yes or no? If no, describe why or how. And then, so there are 2 under the City of Lacey equity values. The second one under that category is the city is committed to delivering exceptional public services, policies, and programs that integrate equity and social justice as core principles as we continue to grow as a vibrant and thriving community. Have you been involved in any controversial equity, including race and social justice issues? Yes or no? If yes, please describe the circumstances. And then we have a category called environmental stewardship. The city is committed to environmental stewardship and conservation. Have you been involved in any controversial environmental issues? Yes or no? If yes, please describe the circumstances. And then the last category is community support. Is there any reason community members would be opposed to you sponsoring city programs? Yes or no? If yes, please describe the circumstances. So we would have the potential sponsor complete that questionnaire. And then this is the other attachment, which is a matrix that staff can use to help review potential sponsorships. So basically these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 align with the 5 items, the 5 questions on the questionnaire. And so staff can go through and make notes and give a determination in each of these categories on whether to pursue the sponsorship
I have a question.
at that time. And with that, I will stop because that's a lot of information.
Jen, I have a question.
Sure.
Number 4 on the questionnaire, where you talk about involvement in controversial equity issues. How subjective might that be for, the answer is yes or no? What's to be considered a controversial equity issue? So is an applicant penalized if it's yes or penalized if it's no? What are you looking for there?
We rate it as a number.
And how is a controversial equity issue defined? So it's not subjective to an
Interpretation.
individual.
So that is number 3, this one? Oh, 4,
Number 4,
number 4.
right there.
Controversial equity. Right, so you know, I think it's important to remember that we want to ask everybody the same questions so that we have a fair and equal process. And this just gives the person an opportunity to share from their standpoint if they have been involved in any controversial issue. And then staff can evaluate it. This is something that staff can use, but it's not the only thing that staff would use. So we want to hear from the sponsor from their perspective, if they have been involved, and if so, what was it around? What was the topic? What were the circumstances?
My concern is the various definitions of controversial equity issues. It's rather subjective.
Commissioner Jackson, I think you bring up a really good point about that subjectivity, right? Of what would meet or not meet that criteria. And my question for you and for the rest of the group as well is looking at question number 4. Do you all think it would make, I guess, more sense to have it framed like question number 3, where it's talking about, do you align and agree with these values, rather than something about describing a controversial equity issue, which is not defined?
Something that takes the subjectivity out of it, so that even though everyone's being asked the same question, it could be interpreted differently how they answer. You know, are you penalized with a yes answer, or are you penalized with a no answer? You know, the issue of what's considered a controversial equity issue. What might be commonplace for me might be perceived as controversial for someone else.
So is it the word controversial that's, is that? where
I think
we're-
it's just like a controversial equity issue could be something good, right? Like you could have led an amazing protest and that could be
Right.
something considered a controversial issue versus, you know, the issue we have with Chick-fil-A, which is kind of negative. So it's like, this kind of gives you the opportunity to speak on like both terms, but I feel like that was kind of like the division she was describing. I
Yeah,
think-
it looks
I don't know.
more, it puts it more of in a negative, it feels like a more negative question as opposed to.
And
I could
that's,
be out there protesting on the corner over some equity issue, and somebody else's mind could be, she need to be at home. She doesn't need to be on the corner, you know. That's not an issue she need to be, you know. So in whose mind is it controversial?
and Commissioner Jackson, that's kind of like going back to the first 3 questions, right? It's like, do your values align with this statement, rather than, you know, some sort of nebulous, undefined element. So I guess again, I'm just thinking about that. Would it make sense to adjust that question? Perhaps something more in alignment with what 1 through 3 is structured like.
I think it would eliminate some potential problems up the road.
Or maybe like rewording as well, like has your, you know, business or corporation been involved or aligned with any controversial issues aligned with, or, you know, something different.
Because with the questions from some of them being you, where I was like going back and forth through the questions, having it say you as opposed to you, has your company, your sponsorship, your overall group. Cause I feel like we're trying to include even the members that are working at those businesses or who we're gonna have as sponsors. Have to ensure that the people coming to the events are in alignment with them as well. So saying you, it's like I'm reading, it, I'm like, oh, this is pointed directly at me, but I feel it needs to be more inclusive. Cause that says, have you been involved? Well, maybe I haven't, but some of my other coworkers or people that I employ, it gets a little questionable how far you go into it. If you said your business or your overall, have any of your people going to be here had a controversial equity issue?
And so, Chair, just a point of clarification on that, and I think also a way we could make it more clear in the questionnaire as well is, like Jen mentioned when she was talking about a definition of a person.
The people,
Being
the
it
person.
more than it's the individual, it's the company, it's the corporation, et cetera. So making sure that that language is included in the questionnaire. So when individuals are filling it out on behalf of maybe somebody greater than themselves, so whether it's for their company or an organization, they know to be thinking in the perspective of it's all of the pieces put together.
It's the whole entity. Yeah, I just, and because, yeah, it's the whole thing. Yeah, you're not just answering for yourself, but everyone who will be supporting this event from your community will be okay coming to these.
Yeah, I see a couple of hands. Commissioner Wheeler? Is your question along these lines or is it on another part of the policy?
No, it's along these lines. I think Commissioner Good had her hand raised before me. I don't know if she would like to address that first, if she's still available. I saw her camera go off, but I'm more than happy to I can have a two-parter.
Well, mine was along the same lines and having concerns about the kind of what they were saying, that when people look at these, they look at their individual company. And if we relate this specifically to Chick-fil-A, then, you know, that individual owner that bought into the franchise could say, no, I've not engaged in this. And that could definitely, you know, get them through this to be able to participate. So like, I really, I like the idea of the verbiage or definition being included, you know, and making sure that's highlighted through, you know, at the beginning of the questionnaire, because otherwise, you know, they could write, no, I haven't specifically, but, you know, all right, that was the biggest thing, and saying thank you to everybody for their hard work that worked on this, because that was a lot of work.
Thank you.
Yes. Commissioner
Yeah,
Wheeler?
mine was similar along. It was kind of two things. One, when like looking at the questionnaire, and you know, and like what its role and what its tool is. I like the idea of creating an opportunity for the business owner to have an interpretation to, because I didn't even look at it as like there could be a positive aspect of it, as I'm like, hey, I've been a good part of a controversy, you know, with question number 4. And I like the idea of there being an opportunity for an interpretation from that business owner to give their opinion on how that is, because we're taking this, you know, that's going to the staff, and then they're making their determination based on their answer. The other piece that I wanted to bring up was along the lines of what Commissioner Good said, where you know, we're looking at this as the individual, the corporation. You know, we have our business owner is that LLC, that sole proprietorship, that local corporation that could be part of a larger franchise that is. And I think if you're just determining like the you piece, you know, I think there may be have to be another defining question of, you know, if you are a franchise owner, you know, if we're wanting these answers, these questions to be answered by this owner, you know, are there any controversies that your parent company could be a part of that would be addressed by, you know, that would need to be addressed? Because I know there's, I think of not just Chick-fil-A, but we also have, you know, there's issues with, you know, Jimmy John's, where the owner is a big game hunter, and maybe that, you know, and that doesn't align with our values, but you know, the local business owner, you know, no issues like that whatsoever. So I think there should be a definition of, you know, you as an individual owner, and then your parent corporation if you're a franchise, if there is any additional things that need to be addressed.
Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Those were the notes I had in the question, so you guys really hit it.
In a way, I like the taking responsibility for a controversy and explaining themselves. It is the statements of, you know, having to sign on, yes, we adhere to these visions, all the equity vision and the parks vision, you know, that's strong language too. But I sort of, because of why we came together on this and wanted to update it, I think it's good for people to take responsibility for what others are hearing and the community members might be coming against. And then it might be enough, their explanation might be enough that we could accept them.
And I think on our last meeting with Commissioner Brown, he stated about the holding people overall accountable, no matter what. So if we're going to do it, I think it has to be a little more broad-based just for that accountability piece. It's can't like, oh, I didn't know that what you were saying, I think in Alabama, that was going on there, but we didn't know here. So it may be helping companies look at their own policies, kind of go back and are we really in alignment with holding that accountability throughout our business practices? So it was just my thoughts when I was reading it. I was like, well, if I was, oh, yeah, well, yeah, I have that, or no, I didn't, but I can't speak for everyone, so.
Yeah, Jen, I just have a process question for you. So when your staff goes through this application and reviews the responses, do you follow up with an interview of that organization to ask clarifying questions, or do you simply go with what they've written and evaluate it based on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we could, I think that we would do whatever we needed to do to feel good about moving forward with a sponsor. So definitely follow up if that's what's needed. And then the other thing that I was just looking for in here that I failed to mention earlier is that we also have the boards that we can come to as well. Somewhere in here, and I guess I could search, it does say that the parks director or designee may seek help from the from boards. Let me search here, unless you know exactly where it is, Shannon, off the top of your head.
I don't, Jen, while you're searching though, Chair Brown, what I would say, and very much in alignment with what Jen just said, of, you know, getting a questionnaire allows staff also to do more diligence and research in addition to any follow-up that they might need to do with the person that is applying, which again, person being used broadly to reflect, you know, corporation as well as an individual.
Yeah, because I would think that a review of their website would be a standard. So a company wants to
It's in their
sponsor.
attachment to, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Attachment to, Jen, and they had a workflow through equity. There's the boxes with it's like process 1 through 9.
Yeah, so
Okay. So I see under number 11, it's this is the one I was looking for. The director is authorized to enter into sponsorship agreements and smaller area like single field naming rights, not the full facility. But the director may seek advice from the Parks Board or other city advisory body on proposed agreements. And then what was I couldn't hear what you said. Was it Commissioner Goodwin?
Oh, the matrix, there's like steps 1 through 9 of the process that it'll go through, and I believe that's on. They had I saw it on yeah, there were.
Yeah, this is a tool to be able to internally staff can go through and.
I think I saw it on the equities, their commission agenda when I was reviewing the link that's inside theirs. But it's fine.
I also think in this, the question of controversy, it gives the city a tool to dialogue too. I mean, maybe they know, but they don't know how impactful it is to a community. They downplay it, or they, you know, that it's a time that we can go over the values and say, this is why we have the values that we have.
Well, these are the big issues in the past. Sponsorship and that, I mean, I know there's been a recent incident, but it was a big thing. I mean, if I'm sponsors them, I could come in here and say, I agree, and you know, and then you do your research. But has it been a time consuming thing?
Well, what I would say, Commissioner, as part of this process is creating, you know, a more standardized
Right.
evaluation. But I do know we have the expert here who does a lot of the sponsorships in the past. So Jeanette, certainly if you have any perspective on that.
I think this will be a helpful tool to have consistent questions, because typically people come to us both prior and want to give us money. We usually say yes. So this has kind of opened up a situation where that may not be the best course of action to represent our city and who we're partnering with. So going through this process, I feel like some of the yes or no, maybe we need a little more. When you're talking about number 4, we need to describe social justice and what we're looking for. But you're right, it opens a dialogue. It gives us a fair, equal grounds for all sponsorships to be considered. And yes, then research on a website, follow up. Hey, what about this? We're hearing this in the news, or this showed up. How do you answer that? Because the local one may say no, 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 or yes, yes, yes. But then more research. And then I'd have to say with Chick-fil-A, that takes us to step 2. We need more input from the board, or one of the boards, or the advisory boards.
Yes, and I think the disconnect is with, you know, franchises versus the corporation. A local franchise may be just great in the community and support all of that. But the corporation could be controversial in some areas that we need to consider before we approve. So, you know, the discussion, sharing with the commissions, reaching out, will help to deconflict, you know, community objections and concerns. I think it said there. So just make sure it's addressed. And by its being consistent and having this process,
Everybody in the same process.
if we get, you know, public comments, complaints, you know, we've used a consistent process, and it's easier to respond or defend a decision if we've used that process consistently.
And I was gonna mention, I think maybe what you were getting to, Chair Brown, is in the procedure, maybe we should add some wording about not just that we'll do the questionnaire, but we'll also do additional research. Is that something you'd be interested in having us add into that? I think it's kind of just assumed, but maybe we need to spell it out a little bit better.
Yes, but I just think an interview of that organization should be, you know, part of the process.
With all of our sponsors, we do, obviously there's a conversation, and we usually, our first, when they approach us or we reach out to them, is why are they wanting to do this? What are they looking to get out of it? What are their, how do they fit with the city? So the conversation has started. So this is just that next step to go farther in making sure we're aligning together.
Yes, because if we say no, then we should be able to explain how we came to that decision. Having this process will help us be able to say we've evaluated they using our set criteria and we decided not to.
Yes.
I want to do it. Kim has had her hand up for quite some time, and I wanted to give her the opportunity to talk if you guys don't mind.
Thank you, Adam. I think I'm on the same line. I was just wondering that you showed the I forget the title, the director may reach out to and seek out others' opinion, but what would you not have like a I mean, is it possible to add in that if that number 4 is checked and there is a controversial and they have explained it, then you actually go through a process of seeking input so that it becomes, yes, it may be subjective, but you are asking, more than one person. One person doesn't make that decision whether it's worthwhile to reach out to somebody, or it's automatically that we open it up and discuss and make that process transparent. That's the who was in and why. That becomes like that subjective idea may become something that the city is willing to accept based on that committees or that went through that process to kind of like legitimize that decision. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, let's have that process built in. So when there is a controversial thing, it's explained there that you have a group of folks from various organization be able to come in and discuss and kind of like make a decision as a group that is objective or not.
So like another joint commission between like parks and equity or something to that effect, for those type of situations. I was thinking something along those lines as well earlier, Kim.
Yeah, I mean, you do have like evaluation criteria, right? I mean, even when you get bid notice for anything, that there is a evaluation group of people doing it kind of together. It's not a single person decision. So I kind of like to see something like that built in, especially if there's a controversial issue it's been brought up and that needs to be discussed.
So commissioners, just as a comment on that, and Kim, Commissioner Sauer, I think it's a really good point. I think one thing to keep in mind though too is the timeliness of some of these requests and how they get turned around. And then also, potentially just thinking about, let's say on an extreme edge of one side of, even going forward with the process, knowing that it doesn't align in any sort of shape, form, or fashion with the city's missions, values, parks missions, values, and our city's equity missions and values. Is that something that, it's worth expending significant amount of time scheduling and bringing back, to a board? So giving, the flexibility for staff to be able to meet time commitments, and then also just knowing that there might be things that are, so extreme that it's not worth the time.
Yeah, well, I would think that, Jen could, if there's an issue, could send an email to, say, the chairs, and say, here's something, I just want your input on it. And we could respond and she could move forward with her decision making based on that. It could be pretty quick.
So I'm just wondering what could be that's so obvious that it doesn't, it's become so clear that you don't need any further discussion. You just come to a conclusion it's not worthwhile for further time. I don't know, that kind of like a little bit scary assumption.
Well, I think that if they're filling out the questionnaire and there's like, to me, if there's more than one area of concern, that might be one that we wouldn't proceed with.
Yeah,
I personally like the flexibility to be able to, just say no to some people and not have to convene the commissions.
Yeah.
I think with process, I'm not sure if we're set up to be able to just get opinions from the chair. So So I personally like the way it's written in so that, you know, I have the option if it's one that I'm struggling with.
If
Will we
the,
be able to stand that decision? I mean, you know, you may think that you have all the reasons to make that decision, but is that really being inclusive if you are not willing to value that? I don't know, that they're willing to look at things a little differently because they have a different. But if you go by, it's totally not within that criteria of our mission and goals and those things, if they're obviously out, then yeah, that's a different matter. But I guess maybe we're not talking the same thing, because if it's totally not aligned, I don't know if they're talking about saving the universe when we try to build a park in city of Lacey, maybe that's different, I don't know. But I think it'll be hard to say that, yeah, I mean, you know, we're very clear on this and we don't really have time to listen out of this because this is our view. Because that is kind of, to me, that's a little bit hard to do.
do we, since these naming rights are, you know, between 5 and 25 years, do we have a process to respond to, you know, potential public outcry from future involvement that some of these companies might, you know, later on down the road, controversies that might happen that would not align with the values of the city? Do we have a way to revoke naming rights?
Commissioner Wheeler, I mean, that's certainly something the city council could take a look at their discretion in the future. And just to make a distinction of, you know, kind of the corporate sponsorship for an event is very different from a naming of a facility that would require Parks Board recommendations and then going back to the full city council for approval. But, you know, like I said, when I started this,
Well, this is strictly just sponsorship questionnaire. Has nothing to do with like the naming. Okay, my mistake.
but to your point, Commissioner Wheeler, yes, the council would have discretion to take a look at facilities that. Sure.
Yeah, I support Jen being able to make the decision, but I think every now and then you get a head scratcher, you know? And that's when, you know, I think Jen would want to reach out to the commission to have some input. Some things are gray, you know, borderline, you know, maybe questionable. Everything's not gonna be black and white or cut and dry. Yeah.
I think the policy addresses that
Mhm.
with, yes, she can do it. If there's questions that are coming up.
Yeah.
Then we have that option rather than making it a mandatory.
Right.
If we get a no or a yes to what, then it has to involve committees, because it does take some time.
And based on that, I have a question. Does the sponsor get notified if they are not accepted and the reasons why they would not be accepted?
Is that something we would build into our policy?
Yeah, I mean, is that, yeah, if you were saying we are not accepting you because of this and this reason, are we letting them know because of these?
I would think that would definitely, yes, we've never
Yeah.
told. So going forward.
Right.
Yes,
Right,
that
and
would.
we're comfortable saying no, and this is the reasons why we can't have you as one of our sponsors.
Yeah, I mean, we would just point out that it's not a good fit and
For the alignment.
And that's the great thing about having the eligibility criteria, like specifically laid out, is that, you know, Jen and Jeanette can then go, you know, we had, upon review, you know, it looks like there might be some disalignment with criteria. And I don't know what that is exactly, but just as an example, being able to point out.
Go back to them and ask them. And then I had one more question based off of that. If they are selected and we have a problem with how they participated in our event based on, we set everything up, we put all the things into place. If we don't have an alignment, what are the ramifications of that for the sponsor? Will they no longer ever be a sponsor again, or are we?
I think you would just bring up the concern and we would work through it just like we would with any other challenge that we come up against.
I just want to make sure, like, if you said you could do this and you said you agreed with everything and then you did not follow through on that commitment, concern after the aftermath, just so that, I don't know if that needs to be transparent. If you do not fall within sponsorship.
Well, in our agreement, we list what they're doing, and then there's follow-up afterwards. So most of the time, it's just they give us money and we, give us, so. We haven't had a naming sponsor yet or a large park partner sponsor. They've all been 1-year event-specific agreements so far.
Thank you. And I think,
Use it, if somebody come in, corporate, you use this form. They look, they got a circle, yes or no,
That,
do they have to sign it?
well, going forwards, that's what we would use, but
Those are
we
the
don't
new
have
ones.
signing it in there. This is that,
that's
the
me.
questionnaire is new to our, we have the policy, now we're adding.
I have a question. After all is said and done, and the potential sponsor or potential namer or whatever, are there appeal processes that you do? If I've just been rejected as a sponsor and I don't agree with the reasons you give me for having turned me down, is there an appeal process?
There is not, Chair Jackson. It's at the discretion of the city whether or not they want to move forward with a sponsorship opportunity.
Okay.
I have a question along another line. And that's having to do with the money. Do you have a budget or a goal that we want to bring in 60,000, 100,000? And is there a pattern of growth in recent years? Each year's been getting more and more.
For event sponsorship, yes, I have a goal to reach each year, and it has increased each year. I can tell you Chick-fil-A last year was $9,000 sponsorship towards 4 different programs. We're going to probably be down at least that much going forward, which will affect some of the events.
But you work hard to
I'm going
find
to try
new
to
and
find new
others,
money, yes.
all these new businesses that are popping up. Okay, great opportunities out there. All right.
So commissioners, if I could just return to the questionnaires and specifically question 4 and 5 for just a little bit more attention here. I just want to make sure that I'm hearing the input and can get some consensus on this. But reading through question 4 and question 5, a thought occurred to me of rather than flipping the alignment and, Commissioner Jackson, thank you for pointing this out. What would be your thoughts if we were to take out for both question 4 and 5 controversial and just focus on their involvement in equity issues and their involvement in environmental issues? So that way we could get a good background of, the types of just variety, of elements they might be involved in those two capacities and areas.
That would solve a large part of the problem. You'd be learning more about that entity. And the subjective definition of controversial would be removed at that point. Equity or environment or whatever the case might be. For my concern on number 4, the removal of the word controversial might solve that whole problem. And so they'd have to answer yes or no and describe the circumstance. And that's much more positive. And you don't have to try and think in terms of, am I going to be penalized if I say yes or penalized if I say no to this particular question? But it gives them an opportunity to talk about equity or to talk about the environment in a positive kind of way.
So maybe the last sentence reads, how have you been involved in equity issues and including race and social? To approach it as letting them tell us without it being a negative thing.
Controversial has a negative connotation. I agree.
That would satisfy me and the concern I had.
Would
in
you
number 4.
still leave in number 6 then?
Yes, certainly, and I think that's open-ended too, for people to provide information on. But happy to hear the commission's input on that question as well. So
No, I agree. I like that better.
But the community support question in 6 is interesting.
You can always say no.
It would be a hard one to answer in some regard, because you'd have to go out into your community and really know the answer to that question, I guess. Take a survey. Would you know the litmus for all your company? Would you know the litmus? Would you be able to talk about your company from that standpoint?
I think I think people like Chick-fil-A and
You think they know?
Hobby Lobby know how they affect the community.
And that's a great
It's
even
just-
substitute for the term controversial in that area in the draft. Cause then this gives them the opportunity to describe those controversial areas that they would have been discussing without language above, without necessarily saying that. So I feel like there is some value in this being there. Yeah, I mean, and of course, they don't know what every individual person that's ever, worked with their program knows or feels about their program. So obviously, if they say no and something pops up, it's not like, oh, they're lying automatically, But I feel like it is a very valuable piece, because then if there is a controversy, on media or in the community, then they could be like, yes, there is this controversial time and period, but it kind of gives them that same space to vocalize that without necessarily incorporating negative language.
Well, maybe we could put it in both of those things in really positive. A little more, not yes and no, but is there anything you'd like the city of Lacey to know about your commitment to social justice and environmental stewardship? I mean, give them a positive way
Yeah.
to tell us.
Cause it's hard to say. If I go shop, people shop here, they come in and they buy my products, even though I don't support them in the community in that way. I don't agree with everything that they do, but they still eat my sandwiches and they still buy my sewing products or whatever that is, but they're not in alignment with my values, but they're selling a product that I need. So do they look at it from a standpoint of I make money, people come in and use my services and everybody likes me in this community? Or are they looking at, yeah, I have all these barriers that I'm putting up in our community, but you need my product. I don't know how they do it, but I would be interested to see how they respond to that.
Yeah, I think making it kind of open-ended,
I think
so they can
too.
kind of wrap it up, here's my business and here's how I'm impacting the community and here's how I'm trying to make a difference in the community. Maybe give some examples, if they provided 150 pairs of socks to the homeless shelter or something along those, they get to talk about themselves to tie things all together and say, this is why, I want to sponsor it and be a part of the city of Lacey.
Well, and we have to be prepared that some of these individuals might, have a completely different opinion of what we would think would be the fair and equitable thing. Like their opinion might be in their eyes, they're doing the service to the community. They are aligned with the community that they, if we're talking like reproductive rights or something, controversial like that, like they may feel like they're in the right with their opinion. And so their answer might reflect that. And we have to be prepared to approach it like that as well.
I think of like number 5 about environmental issues. The way it's worded, it'd be like, okay, well, I dumped a bunch of oil in the channel. That was bad. But if you turn it around, someone would say, oh, I have a robust recycling program that we implemented and, giving it a positive spin. But the same thing, they may say something that's like, maybe doesn't fit with the city's description of a social justice or that kind of thing. But I think taking that word controversial out and how do you align with us in these areas? Or what is your company doing?
That's very helpful. Thank you.
I'd like to make just one other comment. At the last meeting, we had a letter from Chick-fil-A that the local person sent. And I was amazed that it took 2 pages for them to list all the stuff they support in this community. I had no idea. So the issue was sponsorship of the children's program. But I mean, they're feeding high school football teams, they're donating to homeless, I mean, so. Yeah, they could lay that out there and could override the objection the community is showing, but you know, do we want to turn away a business that's, you know, I'm just tossing it out there as a possibility when we start talking about open-ended and give people an opportunity to describe what they do in the community, you know. So again,
That's the exact question we have to answer because Chick-fil-A was one of our sponsors
right,
and they do all those things.
right, that's my point. That's my
But the
point.
community saw the logo.
Pardon me?
The community sees the logo.
Right. So I just toss that out as, it's just gonna have to be case by case and
Right, yes,
nothing's
'cause-
gonna be perfect to suit every situation, but you know,
Yeah.
I'm just saying that one issue becomes offensive to one segment of the community, and then there's another whole bigger segment of the community that's been relying very heavily on the sponsorship and the donations and the whatever. So anyway.
so Jen has a tough job. You guys do, and
Gotta
evaluate
call the shot.
that. It's like I say, it's not all black and white, you know, on each occasion, you know, there's some head scratchers in there sometimes, yeah.
Being anti things is when you have those kind of sponsorships, they're crossing into everybody. You don't know whose life those donations are going to impact. So you may be anti this, that, but at the end of the day, we've got to touch everybody. That's that kindness piece of it. So it's a very difficult job you have. I mean, because they do, like I said, they do a lot of wonderful things, but they did not have the LGBTQ listed on their list of things, but we know that they are community members that were receiving those donations that were part of their anti-campaign in those areas. So it's hard to make that. So I appreciate and applaud you and Jen for doing that. And I'm sure we'll be supporting you going forward in your decisions.
So, and if I may just finish off with the attachments, would this be a good time to do that?
Yes.
And then we can certainly circle back on anything. So the other attachment that's in here is more housekeeping. It is the 5.13 policy of the city council. We did add in the wording that the person refers to the individual, corporation, limited liability company, or any other legal or commercial entity. And then we changed that wording throughout, rather than saying individual. We did add a line, it says facilities shall not ordinarily be named for living persons except under the following conditions. If they have provided exceptional service to the city, substantial length and leadership, if their accomplishments must have had a measurable effect on the quality of life in the community and be directly related to parks, culture, and recreation. And then we added if they fall under the sponsorship and naming rights policy. Under that, and then these are insignificant changes here. Yeah, I guess that was.
Would you mind zooming in?
Oh, sure. Yeah. This better?
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. And just to note that we had already in 2019, when the policy was updated, and this one and the sponsorship policy were both updated at the same time because they do reference each other. We did add in that it could be considered for naming rights under a sponsorship that hadn't been in there before. And then we also said under procedure, this was a prior update, but just kind of to let you all know how the sponsorship policy is related to this city council policy. What came out of that major sponsorship update, the policy update, was that the naming of public spaces should be approached without preconceived notions and with patience and deliberation, and that a sponsorship and naming rights potential really, and the policy should be considered prior to making a naming rights decision. So let's say there is a proposal to name a facility, but there could be with, such and such name over here. We want to really give it some hard thought to, is this a naming right that we could potentially see some significant revenue? I'll give you an example of the regional athletic complex. That's one that ever since it was built, the city has wanted to potentially do naming rights for that facility. And it's something that hasn't come to fruition, but this policy update in 2019 helps set us up for that a little bit better. Because we are, and the reason I named that one is because it is quite an expensive operation to run, and we do have some, it's a highly subsidized facility because it's not only a destination facing facility, it's also a community facility. So I know a lot of people think that the RAC makes money. The RAC is great for the economic impact and brings business into Lacey, which does boost the local economy. It's also, subsidized to the tune of about 60%. And so we're always looking for ways to bring in revenues. And to my point in the beginning of the conversation about helping to offset costs in our department. So something like the RAC, instead of naming it after someone who's been impactful in potentially in the sports world, which would also be a nice thing, we should sit back and consider this could be something that we could, sell a naming rights sponsorship that could be renewable. So we want to really give that consideration. So that's why this policy is in here. And so happy to take questions or input on this policy.
Jen, just one quick addition to what you were just saying about the RAC specifically. I just want to highlight too that, in addition to being, the regional complex, it's also a community park as well and functions as a community park. So just to keep that in mind.
Right, thank you. And that's what I meant by the community facing. There's the destination facing facilities and then the community facing, and that is definitely a part of the community facing portion is the free park for people to access.
So Jen, you're saying that having a corporation or large company take the naming rights at a significant cost would be very helpful.
Yeah, so we had a consultant back in 2018 before we did an overhaul for our sponsorship policies. And it's a potential that facility could be a 10-year contract for naming at approximately $50,000 a year. And so it could bring in significant resources. So she helped us, our consultant helped us with kind of the going rate for those sorts of sponsorships.
In naming, I wonder if the Commission on Equity shouldn't be brought in, naming. We want to have a representative showing on our naming of parks and trails and whatnot, and we don't want to put up any statues and then have to take them down, that sort of thing I'm thinking. Just in this, it doesn't say that we'll be even ask for advice. Just putting that out there.
Well, I would think naming rights, if we use criteria we go through and as it's being evaluated, if there's an issue, then Jen can, should reach out.
Is that in the naming rights or is that only in the sponsorship there?
So it does. So the way that the Commission on Equity is involved in that says the director may seek advice from the Parks Board or other city advisory body. So that would include the Commission on Equity, the Historical Commission, the Planning Commission.
So, yeah, okay, that's good.
But you're right, it's not stated in the city council policy, but for it to get to city council, it would have to go through this,
Right, yeah, Jen.
at least for a sponsorship.
So Jen, if we look back at procedure, it does say the naming of a public space should be approached without preconceived notions and with patience and deliberations. Parks, Culture and Recreation sponsorship and naming rights policy should be considered prior to making a naming rights decision. So they're connected in that way of
There you
saying
go.
it's an opportunity to make sure that there's alignment before it moves forward. So
Right. Yep, thank you for that. Any other questions or comments on the city council policy? We could certainly circle back if you do. We did put in here the sponsorship agreement, just so that you could see, number one, what the agreement looks like. And then we put in here just company to make it generic. And one significant addition that we did make is the non-discrimination verbiage that is also included in the policy to kind of shore those two things together. So happy to answer any questions about the agreement or suggested changes that you might have.
Anybody online? Questions?
Oh,
No, not here.
Do we have?
Okay, and then one last thing that we did include in the packet, just to show how we're shoring up policies. We do have, oh, sorry, take that off. We do have an adopt a trail, adopt a park policy as well. And so we're running this through our city attorney. We and also wanting to be consistent when somebody adopts a trail or a park, there is signage placed in the parks. And so that's related to advertising for that person. So we did change the terminology to the person, which includes all these things that we've talked about. And what we've said is that the full eligibility criteria will follow the Lacey Parks Culture and Recreation sponsorship and naming rights policy. And that the name, so when someone comes to us for adopting a trail or a park, when it comes to the signage, we will take them through the same questionnaire that we just went over, and we can use the same matrix in making that decision. And then it also calls out that the recognition sign will be the person's, and that's of course referring to any of these things up here, official name, and only the name may be displayed on the sign. No other information may be included. So these are pretty small signs, but they really only have space for a name. I don't know if you've seen them around town. It's very similar to the Adopt a Street program that the city has. So we did want to show you that but really trying to consider how these policies are related and use the same criteria.
Great. Do we have any general questions or observations from anyone, either in Zoom or online?
I would just like to comment that the staff did a tremendous amount of work on this, and it's greatly appreciated, and it would probably serve the city in years to come.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jen, and your staff, and all of you.
That was really.
It's a lot to incorporate.
thank you, Jen.
Yeah, thank you. And I really want to thank Shannon too. She was super insightful and helpful with all of this. So, and to let you know, we're leaders in this area. There isn't a lot of guidelines out there. And so, we typically look to those bigger cities. And so we did, look to the city of Seattle for some research and advice on this one. But thank you, really appreciate it. And next steps, I'm curious if the boards would be amenable to making a recommendation as amended with the changes that we talked about, or I'm looking to Shannon too. Would we need a follow-up meeting on this one?
Well, commissioners, from what I heard was that really the big thing to focus some additional updates on is the questionnaire. And certainly heard about adding the definitions of person onto the questionnaire so people understand how you is used to refer to something much broader than an individual, as well as looking at questions 4 and 5 and turning them into a positive, which allows people to talk about their experiences of themselves or their corporation as far as equity and sustainability and environmental stewardship. I just want to confirm though, when we're taking a look in the action item, which Jen was just referring to, was about approving the updated corporate sponsorship and naming rights policy and to amend or to recommend it go to the full city council for final improvement. We have a couple of Scribner little small minor errors that we need to take care of, but substantively, just want to make sure that we've kind of done a thorough, diligent look through it and that I didn't miss anything in hearing some significant changes.
I think the content's there. I think the content is there and it's been heard and I think it'll address it and then I think it'll work.
So are you looking for a motion to approve it?
Yeah, to recommend it full city council.
Okay, so we probably should do it separately. So for the Commission on Equity, I'll entertain a motion to recommend the policy with the necessary edits to the full council.
And just to be clear, the policy being the corporate sponsorship and naming rights policy, being the sponsorship and naming rights policy, as well as the city council policy, formerly 10-16.
And not the questionnaire.
Correct. Well, the questionnaire will certainly make those updates and that's, it's going to be in that attachment. So as updated with those.
So will someone make a motion?
Motion.
Okay, can we get a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved to probably second that we recommend this to go forward to the full council. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, then for the Commission on Equity passes.
Would you like one from the park board as well? For the approval of the Mission on Equity Board for Lacey Parks, agenda, what is it? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So I'd happy to for the recommendation to the
do
full
what you
city
did for him.
council for the updated sponsorship and naming rights policy and the city council policy formerly 10-16 for moving forward to the full city council for approval.
For the Lacey Park Board of Parks, Culture and Recreation Board, are there any additions or issues with this before we move forward as an action item?
No,
No.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And sorry, just to confirm and I.
Do it one more time, Shannon.
Was there a motion, the first motion?
Yes, we did the first and they said
Who
there
who
was.
was the first?
You can't make it. Someone else.
Oh, is there a, I'm sorry, is there a motion that we approve?
Okay, then I will make the motion to approve.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you so much. And again, really appreciate all of your time and energy spent on such an important thing. And we will keep you updated as to when this will be going. It'll probably go to a work session first And then to the council meeting, but we will keep both boards updated on those dates.
We'll be talking up sponsorships. We're like,
Yeah.
yeah, come on over. Sign up for a
Corporate sponsor
sponsor.
for the rack.
Let's do that.
I have a couple.
Oh, let's talk, yes.
Yeah, if you have ideas, let us know. Thank you. All right, well, everybody have a great evening and thank you again.
Thank
Appreciate you.
everyone for your
Thank
input on this.
You guys have a good night.
Oh, and
Everybody Together.
the meeting's over at 6:59. Sarah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Officially adjourn us.
Oh,
So the meeting is officially adjourned at 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
7? Yeah.
We're just.
7 p.m.
Whoa.